So welcome everyone, Scott Talley from the worldwide headquarters of Network in Action. Welcome. I know you only have about 10 invites every week to a webinar of some type or some talk, but I'm super glad you took advantage of this today. You know, when we started Network in Action in 2014, I think it was cathartic for me that I did it to help build deeper relationships with people. And certainly we've done that. But like all great introductions, my life and relationship with Mike Foster came about with a great referral. So I think you're going to enjoy Mike today. He's been coaching people for 20 years, over 20 years. He works with Navy SEALs, Grammy-winning hip hop artists, Emmy-winning actors, best-selling authors, well-known coaches, and he even took on his biggest challenge to date, me. So we've had the privilege of getting to know each other last year. Mike's got a great book out that we're going to talk about a little bit, The 7 Primal Questions. But at the end of the day, this guy knows about relationships, and he knows about the things that are getting in our way that keep us from having those great relationships. So I don't want to take up any more time. Mike, it is so good to have you. I know how busy you are. I'm so grateful that you've decided to donate your time to help us all have deeper and more meaningful relationships. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Scott. Hello, everybody. It is awesome being with you today on a Wednesday. Today, I do want to talk about relationships and understanding sort of the core drivers of our relationships, how to do relationships in a better way. And my kind of my story, my work over the past 20 years, which feels like a long time, but it's gone very quickly, has really just been helping people build emotional fitness, helping them build strength and resiliency in their lives so that they could thrive and flourish in all the different ways, whether it's in their families, in their marriages, at work, wherever the context is. I believe it's really important that if we want to have great outcomes and great results in those different domains of our life, the most important factor of that is actually how we show up in our own kind of emotional health and our understanding of our triggers, understanding of our emotions, understanding of sort of those core drivers of our life. And so I've written several books. My latest book, as Scott mentioned, is called The 7 Primal Questions. I'm excited to say it's a bestseller, by the way. It is like, just been an amazing run. It actually came out a year ago and just continues to really hit a nerve, I think, with people in terms of giving a simple way of understanding those deep parts of who we are as human beings and understanding human psychology in a new way. And so what I want to do is unpack that concept for you today, help you understand not only how it will play out in your life, but in your relationships. And then, of course, as coaches and people who are daily helping others in their own journey, I hope that this tool will be a great asset to you in terms of the work that you're doing with other people. But let me start with a kind of a story that, oh, by the way, one of the other things I should say that I do is part of my work is obviously writing, speaking, do a lot of workshops, a lot of things around that, around the primal question with that. But we also have a certification program for coaches, which we teach coaches, therapists, counselors, leaders how to use the model with their clients. And so if you're interested in any of this stuff, let me actually just give you the website. It's just primalquestion.com, and you can get all that information there. So let's dive in. When I was growing up, my favorite ride at Disneyland was the motorboat cruise. And the motorboat cruise was these little boats that you could ride and drive around Fantasyland Lagoon at Disneyland. They had a little motor. They were, and it was, I guess it was a kid's ride, though adults could do it too, but mostly it was for kids. And I loved this ride because I felt that it was so awesome that Walt Disney would give, 8-year-old Mike Foster the responsibility and the trust to drive a boat around Fantasyland Lagoon, because there was a lot of dangers and obstacles in Fantasyland Lagoon, like the uh, pylons for the that held the people mover, and then there was the submarines that were kind of right next to the lagoon, and of course there were the other boats. And I remember as a kid just always looking forward to our annual trip to Disneyland, where I could be a captain of the motorboat cruise ride. And I'd get in that boat and I'd start driving around Fantasyland Lagoon. And I thought, man, this is awesome. This is amazing. I love this. And I remember thinking to myself how great I was at driving this little boat for being an 8-year-old. I mean, it's like I had some skills. Like, man, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe there's a future in the Navy, United States Navy for me. It's calling, it's beckoning me. And I remember driving these little boats and driving my little boat up to the dock to let other kids get in. And I remember every time I pulled up to the dock, I always just did such a fine job pulling that boat up and would be within, inches of the dock. And I never would hit the dock, but just perfect as I pulled up. Well, a couple years later, as I was getting older and wiser, I realized that this time when I was riding the motorboat cruise and got into my little boat, that not everything was as it was seemed. That I was kind of turning this wheel and wanting to go in a particular direction, but the boat would slowly bring me back to kind of center. And I'm kind of like, I don't think I'm actually in full control over this boat. Well, as you know, as an adult and as an intelligent person, you realize that there is no way Walt Disney would allow little kids to drive boats around Fantasyland Lagoon. And really what was going on here was that there was a track underneath the water that was guiding the boat on a predetermined destination. And I think what happens a lot in our lives is we believe that we are in full control of our lives, that we are the captain of our own ship. But the reality is that there's something underneath the water that has to be looked at and has to be understood if you want to have a successful life, if you want to have healthy relationships. And that track underneath the water is the primal question. It is what drives your choices, your behaviors, your emotions, the health of your relationships, the health of the relationship that you have with yourself. It is what I like to say, the primal question is the thing underneath the thing that drives everything. And every single one of us right now has a primal question. We have this track underneath the water. And the people that succeed and really thrive and flourish in their lives are the ones that understand that that track is there, that they can see that track. They have language and words to describe that track and how that track influences the boat that you're driving, okay? And those who live at a disadvantage in their lives are the ones who will never look under the water or see the influence of the primal question. So what is the primal question? The primal question is really a question that we ask that is representing our deepest need that we have as human beings. Okay, now there's 7 of them, and so there's really 7 deep needs that all human beings have. But the primal question is the one question that's actually that is most important, what I sometimes refer to as your apex emotional need. It is the need that is at the top above every need that you have, and when that need is met, life is good. But when that need is unmet, life isn't so great. And I think when we're working with coaches or working with or working as coaches and then working with couples or working with people, a lot of times we focus on the wrong thing in our coaching sessions. We focus on the wrong solutions in terms of trying to help improve a couple's marriage or their relationship with their kids or a relationship with their boss. See, typically what we'll do is we will look at a behavior. We'll look at something that they're doing. Maybe they're very angry or they're grumpy or they're giving us the cold shoulder or they're very negative around it. So we look at those behaviors and we go, okay, we got to change those behaviors. We got to work on those behaviors. But that is really, to me, coaching 101. It's certainly can have some benefit to like change people's behaviors, but we need to understand that there's something underneath those behaviors that's driving those behaviors. And underneath the behaviors are emotions and feelings. And emotions and feelings drive our behaviors. Okay, so if I'm angry, if I'm experiencing anger, if I'm frustrated, or if I'm sad, I'm going to get a particular set of behaviors, right? And so maybe in therapy or maybe counseling, we come in and go, okay, let's talk about our feelings. Let's talk about our emotions. And I would say like that is maybe 401 level college coaching and help. It's important. Emotions and feelings are important. It's important to understand that. But if I'm trying to help a couple, I don't want to just look at their behaviors that are happening in their marriage or the relationship. I don't want to just understand the emotions and feelings. I want to understand what's even deeper and what's driving the emotions and feelings in this flow chart. And what sits underneath our emotions and feelings is an unmet need. In many ways, you can look at the primal question and the 7 primal questions as needs-based therapy or needs-based coaching. That what drives the whole formula of our life, behaviors, choices, feelings, emotions, is an unmet need. And when that unmet need goes unmet, it is going to produce a lot of chaos in our lives. But when that need is actually met, and it's sort of overflowing, we're going to produce a lot of health and stability and good things for our life. And so the primal question, kind of how it historically works. And by the way, this is based on 6,000 hours of one-on-one interviews, over 32,000 assessments, 5 years of research. This isn't just something I pulled out of my butt. I have been studying this thing exhaustively. And what's so great about it is it's a very simple concept, but it has incredible horsepower behind it. So early in your childhood and in your early years of life, you got imprinted with a primal question. And basically what happens is that primal question gets imprinted because it's a need that's going unmet in your childhood, or it's something that is confusing that is happening in your family, or something that you don't understand as a child. And so you keep asking this question, and when you get a yes to your primal question, life is good. But when you get a no, you go into what I call the scramble. And the scramble is all the ways that we have figured out using our kid logic to get our needs met, or get that need met, that most important need met. And so the scramble is all the sort of dysfunctional things that we do, the self-sabotaging things that we do, the overgiving, the perfectionism, the over-responsibility, the people-pleasing, the workaholicism, all the stuff that we do. And all of that scramble activity is about trying to get that need met so that life can be good again. Basically, we're forcing a yes to our primal question and really meeting that need in an unhealthy way. And so what happens is we have this imprint, this childhood imprint with this question, and then we become adults and we subconsciously keep asking this question over and over again. Again, when we're in our marriage, we keep asking this question to our spouse over and over again. And when our spouse answers it with a yes, our marriage, our relationships are going to work really well. But when our spouse answers that with a no or a maybe, we're going to have conflict. In fact, one of the things I say in the book is that you cannot be in a healthy relationship with somebody who keeps answering your primal question with a no or a maybe. It's just impossible. And that's true whether it's a romantic relationship, that's true whether it's a boss, that's true whether it's a friend. if that need, that core need that you have as a human being keeps going unmet in that relationship is unsustainable. Okay. So let's talk about the 7 questions. And what I want to do is run through all 7, and I want to give you kind of the profile of each question. I want to talk about kind of the kryptonite, the thing that will immediately send this person with this question into their scramble. And then I also want to talk about how every single primal question comes with a relational superpower. It comes with what I call the primal gift. So let's start with the first question, and feel free to write these down. Again, they're at the website at primalquestion.com. And the first question is just the primal question of, am I safe? And this is the core need for physical and emotional safety. And typically what the research shows with this question, how this question gets imprinted, is that typically people who come from homes where it was chaotic, disruptive, addiction, mom or dad perhaps had a drinking problem or a drug problem, or there's just tons of instability in that family home or in your upbringing. And you're going to be imprinted with this question, just wondering whether I am safe or not. Okay. Another part of this question in terms of its imprint is if you experience any type of abuse or trauma in your early childhood, safety is going to become the lens of how you look at life and how you look at pretty much everything in terms of your relationships and the world. So this primal question is my primal question. And here's how this primal question got imprinted on Mike Foster. So when I was a young kid, my parents used to send me over to a family friend's house to spend the night when they would kind of go away or go on a little weekend trip, or there's a work thing that my parents had to be at. I would go over to this family friend's house and spend the night for the weekend. And my parents trusted this person. This person was close to my family. And yet when I went over to that person's house, that person would sexually abuse me every time I went over there. And so that trauma, we know this as coaches and as people, at any time you have any type of physical, sexual, emotional abuse happening in your early childhood, that's like a bomb going off in a kid's life. Okay. And so my safety became my number one priority, because one of the things that happens with abuse is you literally think as a kid that this is a life or death thing, like you are going to die. It feels so out of control. It feels so confusing that it literally feels like a life or death situation for you. And so I get imprinted with this question. And now I carry this question into my adult life. And how do I operate with my primal question of, am I safe? Well, my scramble looks like this. Well, by the way, when the world answers my primal question with a yes, again, Mike Foster is great. That feels so good. When things are safe, orderly, when they're peaceful, they're calm, Mike feels great. But unfortunately, Mike doesn't live in a world that serves that up every single day. It's like, here, Mike, here's safety. Oh, by the way, don't worry about this little war going over in Israel. Don't worry about that COVID thing. That's, unfortunately, we don't live in a world where the society is going to answer Mike Foster's primal question with a yes. So I get a lot of no's. And when I get a lot of no's or maybes to my primal question, how do I respond to that? Well, my scramble looks like hypervigilance, hyper control. One of the things that I tend to do is obsess over details, because there's this belief that if I can control everything and I can predict everything, then I'll be safe. Again, this is what I call kid logic. These are the coping mechanisms from our childhood that we figured out. If I just did these things, then I can have my that core emotional need met. But now I don't want to live that way. I want to live where I talk about in the book that as long as we're living in the question and asking the question, the primal question to society, we live at the mercy of society's answers, or we live at the mercy of our spouse's answers, or our friends' answers, or our coworkers' answers. And instead, what we want to do is step into what I call the primal truth. And the primal truth is where we take our question and turn it into a statement, where am I safe becomes I am safe. And that's this new healthy way for me to respond to that need not being met in a healthier way instead of going into the scramble. Do you know that most conflict in relationships, the reason why most relationships kind of fail is because we are having a relationship with each other's scramble instead of each other. Okay. Let me say that again. Relationships fail because we are often in relationship with each other's scramble. Again, all of this kid logic, coping mechanism, dysfunctional stuff that we do to try to meet our need, instead of this healthy, whole adult that is living in his primal or her primal truth of saying, I don't ask the question anymore. I can answer this question myself. See, what I forget about my primal question, and this is what coaches do all the time, we actually remind people of what is actually true, okay? Not what the scarcity mind is saying or what fear is saying or what shame is saying. We invite people into truth. And so what I have to remind myself now is, hey, Mike, you're 6'4", 210 pounds, okay? You're not a little kid anymore. You can protect yourself. Hey, Mike, you live in a really safe suburb of San Diego, okay? You're not in the inner city of Chicago, all right? You're doing good. Hey, Mike, you have the ability to, you have resources now to protect yourself. You have a voice now that you can protect yourself. It's helping the individual move from this place of kid logic and keep asking the question into healthy adulthood, or what I would call self-leadership. Okay, so the kryptonite for this question is confusion and unpredictability will send people right into their scramble. My wife and I had a pretty big argument or just fight this past week over taxes. Okay, because I got this really huge tax bill. I was sort of prepared for it, but I wasn't prepared for the all of it. There's a little bit of surprise in that. And again, am I safe? I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm triggered. All of a sudden I am not feeling safe. All of a sudden, like there's something that I can't control. And I just found myself stepping into all of this amped up energy around this. And I was now taking it out on my wife. Okay. Don't want to do that. But that's what happens when we get in our scramble. We take it out, unfortunately, on our most important relationships. Now, I mentioned earlier that with every question comes a gift, like an upside, a relational superpower. And so the relational superpower with question one is the ability to deploy safety and peace into chaos and conflict. One of the things that is true about me is people will tell me their deepest, darkest secrets after just knowing me for a couple minutes. Okay. This has happened my entire life. Now, I didn't learn that in college. I didn't go to school like, oh, how to get people to tell you their deepest, darkest secrets in under 5 minutes. I did not take any course on that. I just, what I've discovered is that in the research, what we do with our primal question is we take our own primal question, whatever it is, and we put it over everybody else in the world, everybody else that we meet. And what we do is we try to answer our primal question for everybody else. So I'll give you an example, like Scott. Okay. So I'm going to take my primal question. Scott has a different primal question. If I take my primal question, I put over Scott. And I assume, this is all subconscious, by the way, I assume Scott is asking the same primal question as I am. Am I safe? And so guess what I do? I do all these sort of unconscious things to help him feel safe. Could be just the way I talk, the energy that I'm giving off, some of the things that I might be saying, but I'm really trying to answer that primal question with a yes, which is our gift. Okay. It's what makes me a great coach is that people feel safe with me. Because I have been I really, in many ways, have a PhD in safety, because the thing that I need most and have needed the most in my own life is the thing that I give away to others. Okay, that's a superpower. That is a strength and a gift that comes from your primal question. Question number 2, am I secure? This is the core need for financial and relational security. Typically, this imprint comes when people who grew up in homes where money was tight, there just wasn't a lot of resource, and maybe mom and dad had problems paying the bills, and there's just this conversation of like not enough, okay, to go around. I have a client who flies in on his $30 million jet. Okay, his name's Davis. I wrote about him in the book, and he's probably worth, I don't know, $500 million. Runs a huge successful company, CEO, founder. And the work that we do together is helping Davis deal with his primal question of, am I secure? See, he works 60, 70-hour weeks because he's not sure if he has enough money to survive. Okay. Now, that may sound ridiculous to you and I. It's like, hey, man, if you're flying around a $30 million jet, you probably got enough money in those bank accounts. If you're worth $500 million, you probably got enough. You're going to be okay. You're going to be able to pay those bills, Davis. But I tell people that math is no match for emotions. This is how profound and important the unmet need is within us. That's how important this primal question is within people. It is the driver of how they see everything. And so Davis's scramble looks like 70-hour weeks, okay, flying all around the country and really the world to try to build his business so he could be financially secure. So what is the kryptonite for this question? Financial insecurity. Anytime somebody is faced with some lack of resource or a surprise bill, or the car breaks down and you got to put a new transmission in it, this sort of surprises and this sort of no's and maybes to the primal question of, am I secure, sends people into their scramble. And the gift part of this is, again, taking their primal question and putting it over everybody else, is they make great providers and have this ability to create stable environments through processes and practicality and pragmatism. And they look at money in a particular way when they are operating in their primal gift and really standing in their primal truth. You see, the gift that you have to give through your primal question is directly correlated to how much time you spend in your scramble. So the more scramble you have, the less gift you're giving. But the less scramble, really the more primal truth, I am secure, I am safe, the more capacity to give away your gift. All right. Question number 3, am I loved? This is the need to feel known, seen, and emotionally attached. Okay. My wife's primal question is question 3, am I loved? And knowing this in our marriage and knowing this in our relationship, we've been married almost 30 years, celebrating 29 years in June. The following year is 30 years. And this concept, the primal question concept, has completely revolutionized our relationship because it helps us focus on what's really happening in our relationship. It allows us to not devolve into nonsense and drama, but actually talk about the most important thing, and that is my primal question and her primal question. And so she grew up in a family where mom didn't listen to her. She was the 4th child. I kind of tease her sometimes. I always say, you know, when you came along, your parents were done parenting. Okay. That's why you were a latchkey kid. That's why they were back into their careers. And that's why you wondered whether you were actually loved or not. Her mom also, and I have a great mother-in-law. Part of this, by the way, friends, is not an opportunity to blame our parents or to blame our caretakers. That's not the point. The point is to understand how the question or the need got imprinted on us so that we can manage it and operate with it in a more healthy, clear way. Okay. But her mom has this tendency just not to listen, talks over Jennifer all the time, did it as a kid. And so Jennifer just got confused growing up and wondering, does my dad love me? And so now she brings that question into our marriage. And I better be able to answer that question clearly for her, right? I want to know. When I talk to Jen, I say, Jen, tell me the 2, 3 key ways of how I can answer your primal question with a yes. Because I know if I can do that as her husband, I'm going to have this amazing relationship with her and not her scramble. I also want to know, I say, hey, Jen, please let me know how I am answering your primal question with a no or a maybe right now. Because I don't want to do that as your husband. I don't want to do that in this relationship. And so tell me what I need to stop doing to answer your primal question with a no or a maybe, and tell me what I need to start doing so I can answer it with a yes. And when we get couples and we get people focused on understanding that deep need, that unmet need that drives everything, emotions and feelings, and then behaviors, we have just cleared away all the nonsense, all the clutter, and we got to the core of everything when it comes to that relationship. Okay. It's been game changing for me and my wife in our marriage. Because, like, oh, yeah, I know what's going on here. I just answered her primal question with a no. And I know how to repair that. I know what to do. We've had multiple conversations. When I was talking to her about this tax thing, I told her, I said, hey, listen, you are experiencing my scramble. And here's why I felt unsafe. Because that tax bill was a big surprise and I wasn't quite prepared and I felt out of control and I felt afraid. Okay. And that allows us to have these really powerful conversations now. The primal gift here is just that these folks, they're gifted at loving and caring for others. I just call them empathy experts. They're just so relationally strong. They're people pros because they take their primal question of, am I loved? And they put it over everybody else and they want to answer it with a yes. By the way, if you're a parent, you will parent to your primal question. Okay. You will put your primal question on your kids and you will do everything you can as a parent to answer that primal question with a yes. So my parenting style was all around safety. My wife's parenting style was all around love. Okay. And again, it is the thing that drives everything. It is the track underneath the water that impacts everything here. Right. Primal question number 4, am I wanted? This is the core need to feel accepted, pursued, and to belong. And the kryptonite for this individual is just being rejected or left out. This question comes up a lot when I'm coaching people, kids whose parents divorced early on, and one of their parents kind of went MIA. And so there's this confusion from the child thinking, do they not want me? How come they're not in my life anymore? How come they're not pursuing me anymore? And so they wonder if they're wanted. Sometimes they just feel a lot of rejection in the family system. They feel like an outsider, and they just, again, whether it was true or not, where it's just kid logic. It's just these kids trying to figure out how the world works, and they just come to these conclusions that perhaps I'm not wanted in this family. And yet their gift, their relational gift is really their superpower is inclusion and welcoming and gathering. You know, if I want to start something, if I want to start a business or open up a franchise or, whatever, I want to get a party together, I'm going to lean into Q4s because they have this power to convene and to get people together. I do not have that power. I have the power of safety. But this also becomes a really cool tool to see how we can deploy people's primal gifts in our organizations or in our families, or when there's particular needs. It's like, oh, let's get our Q4s together to put together the block party, the 4th of July block party, right? You don't want Q1s organizing that, and you don't want your Q2s organizing that. Q2s are going to be going like, oh, we're spending way too much money on this. Okay, we can't do that. All right. Q1s are going to be going like, oh yeah, no, we can't light up those fireworks. We might burn all the houses down. Okay, but your Q4s, man, get them together, get them working on convening, because it's an incredible, powerful gift. Q5, question 5, primal question 5. Am I successful? And this is the need to win and to contribute and to have status. And typically what happens here in terms of the imprint of why this question sits within the subconscious, or why that track is there for these individuals, is that they tend to grow up in what I just call competitive families, where mom and dad were keeping score around grades or sports. I have a client that I work with, and he says it best. He's a Q5. And he goes, man, when I played well on the baseball field for Little League, my dad, and the ride home with my dad would be super talkative, and he'd be like super excited and really engaged. But every time I played not so great on the Little League field, or our team lost, dad was kind of quiet on the ride home. And again, is dad doing anything wrong? No. Okay. He's just not understanding how he's creating some confusion for his son. And so his son figured out, like, how do I make dad happy? I have to be successful. Okay. And so now he takes that into his life, and he just, everything's a scoreboard. Everything's about winning. Everything's about charging the hill, conquering. Okay. It's like, it's about success. And probably the best example of this is Kobe Bryant. You probably say Michael Jordan also would have the question 5, am I successful? But if you look at Kobe's life and you look at the way how he showed up, it was all about winning. Okay. That was the driver of his life. Now, no big surprise how that got there, because his dad was a professional athlete. Okay. And so it was like in the Bryant home, it was all about winning. Okay. And then Kobe gets imprinted with this question. And now one of the things that they said about Kobe is that Kobe would always be the first in the gym and always the last one out of the gym. Okay. When it came to practice. In fact, Byron Allen, who was the head coach of the Lakers, said that he found Kobe Bryant practicing 2 hours before anybody else showed up to the gym, and the lights in the gym weren't on, but he continued to practice for 2 hours in the dark, because that's how committed he was to winning. All right. It was just a mindset. Why? Because that was the lens of, he wanted to get yeses to the am I successful question. All right. The other thing that we saw this play out was with his own kids. Kobe passed away in a helicopter accident on his way to be a coach for his daughter's basketball team. Okay. He was so committed to being a successful father. Okay. And one of the great gifts that comes out of Q5s is they know how to win. It's like, if I'm in an organization, I want to make sure I've got, the director of sales, I want to make sure he's an am I successful primal gift. Okay. Because he's going to know how to win, how to succeed, how to get the ball in the basket. There is just this winning attitude and this winning mindset that's very powerful. They also make great coaches, because they can see the strategies and the things that are needed to help somebody be successful in their life. All right, Q6. I'm going to wrap up here in just a minute. Question 6 is, am I good enough? And this is just the core need of feeling valued and affirmed for who you are. And typically, the research shows on this particular question, there was a lot of judgment and criticism growing up. Maybe mom didn't like your hair. Dad didn't like your friends. There's sort of this nitpicking. There's sort of this pressure of perfectionism in your home. And so what happens is you get implanted with this question going, am I good enough? Am I measuring up here? And you keep asking this over and over again, and it expresses itself in two different ways as adults. Again, the thing that drives everything here. It gets expressed in adults as sort of what I would call just massive insecurity, lack of confidence, just feeling like they're not enough. So they tend to be wallflowers or super people pleasers. They often struggle with shame. So that's one way it expresses itself. You know, always doubting themselves. Okay, there's a lot of self-doubt. But the other way that it often expresses itself is through narcissism. Actually, I have a lot of compassion for narcissists because narcissism is just part of the scramble. It's just a coping mechanism to try to get this question answered. And so a narcissist reminds everybody how awesome they are, okay? And how they're the most important thing in the world. And it's sort of this over-indexing on telling people of their value, all right? And understanding that and understanding, like, why do we have these behaviors? Well, there's an unmet need. There's a question going unanswered. And so if you want to have a healthy relationship with a Q6, you want to answer that question, am I good enough first? I had a CEO, CFO that I was working with, and every time the CEO would come in and give some feedback to the CFO got really defensive. Walls went up. And what was happening there was every time the CEO came in to talk about the numbers on the business, and maybe they were a bit underperforming or having a bad quarter or what have you, the primal question of the CFO, which was like question 6, am I good enough, was being answered with a no or a maybe when the CEO brought up the discussion of the company's performance. Okay. And so if anytime you're finding sort of this defensiveness or towards feedback, just, helping someone improve, you're seeing walls, you're seeing people shut down, that typically is a Q6 phenomenon because what you're doing is answering their primal question with a no. Now, how do we get somebody like that out of their that kind of behavior? Number one is before you bring feedback, you want to answer their primal question with a yes. Okay. The other thing is you want good coaching for that CFO who has a Q6 about how they can live more in their primal truth. I am good enough. Okay. And so their kryptonite is always going to be, what's going to shake their snow globe? Criticism or judgment just sends them right into their scramble. But they also have this incredible gift. They tend to be high achievers. They tend to be excellent at what they do, and they know how to maximize value. And then the final question of question 7, do I have purpose? And this is just the core need for significance and to live a life of impact. What does that look like? Well, purpose, doing things, meaningful work, helping people, making a difference in the world, making a dent in the universe. This is what these folks think about. And when they feel like they're stuck in a purposeless job, or they don't see how this process is going to deliver something important, when you get into the weeds, they struggle because they tend to be bigger thinkers or visionaries. This is again the track for their life. And the research shows on this one, it's fascinating that a lot of people who have the question, do I have purpose, grew up in a religious home. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because mom and dad were exposing the child to theology that probably looked like this: God has a plan for your life. God's going to use you to impact the world. Oh, let's talk about the missionaries who are over there helping build wells in Africa. These are the sort of themes that you hear. And then all of a sudden you grow up, again, you're like, purpose is really important in my family and to me. And it's like, I got to have one. And you grow up and you feel a little bit lost, or you feel like you're not making a difference at your middle management job. All of a sudden now you're in your scramble. these folks tend to struggle a lot with what I call calling angst, where they feel like they're not doing enough, that their job isn't that important. And so maybe they're bouncing to different jobs, or they're just, waiting for somebody to tell them what to do with their life. Again, all that's scramble, all of that's doesn't serve them well. But when they live in their purpose, and when they live in their primal truth, knowing that every day of their life has purpose, it's a powerful thing. In businesses, you want to have a meeting about where the company could go and what we could accomplish in the next 3 to 5 years. You want to have a Q7 because they see the big picture. They can see like where the opportunities for impact could be. I have a friend who's a CEO of a talent agency, and he flew like 100 plus of employees here to San Diego from all over the country. They all came to San Diego, drove across the border, and built homes in Tijuana for 3 days. Why did he do that? Well, his primal question is, do I have a purpose? And so not only does he want his work to have more meaning, hey, I run a company, I'm the CEO, I pay these folks salaries. Great. I'm going to bring them down. I'm going to do something that's really impactful. Okay. More than just the work that we're doing. But he also is putting his primal question over all of his employees. And he wants to answer that with the yes, I'm going to help you feel your life has purpose right now by exposing you to these 3 days of helping the needy and the poor. And so all of this, again, let me just kind of recap. All of us have this question. All of us have a question that is driving your little motorboat cruise boat, okay? Every one of us need to understand how that primal question impacts us for the good and for the negative. The more that we understand the unmet need and how it impacts us, we have a better understanding of who we are. But probably more importantly, the more that we understand the primal question of others, the better connection that we can have with them. When you can answer somebody's primal question with a yes, you lower the drawbridge to their heart and allows you to walk across that drawbridge into the castle and have this amazing relationship with them. But when you are answering the primal question with a no or a maybe, guess what? That drawbridge goes up. No access. We're done here. All right. And so it gives you this whole new language to describe those internal drivers of your world. It gives this whole new framework and vision for how to connect with other people in relationship. It is a superpower that you can use. It's like, I just sometimes describe this like seeing the Matrix. It's like all of a sudden, all the pieces and everything just comes into alignment and you can see it. And you're going to probably later this week, as you're along your life, you're going to go like, oh yeah, that's a Q3 right there. Or that's a Q5. Oh yeah, he's an am I safe person. You're probably thinking right now about people, like, oh, that's why they do that. They're at Q6. They're asking the primal question, am I good enough? Okay. All of it starts making sense. And that's my hope, is that equipping you as a coach, as a friend, as a spouse, as a parent, to better understand the core drivers of yourself and the people that you love and care about. So again, if you want to learn more about this, primalquestion.com. There's also a free assessment on there. I encourage you to take that to understand what your primal question is, and it generates a little coaching video and gives you some more information about your particular results. All that's free, by the way. And of course, if you want to learn more about it, there's always the book that's available at Amazon.com. But I'm going to throw it back to Scott. Thanks
Awesome.
everyone for letting me share.
I'm so fascinated, Mike. So I want to ask you a question, because as I got to doing this work, and I don't think my wife would mind, she's on here today. It's so funny because Mike's and his wife and my wife and I reverse. So my wife is primal question 1, am I safe? And I'm more like, am I loved? So it was very easy for Mike to help Mariah and I very quickly, sort of watching where we were scrambling each other scramble.
A great way to say
It's
that,
made it
Scott.
so easy, instead of getting angry when she's trying to keep everyone safe and I'm telling her, I want to raise strong kids. Now I say, as you taught me, how do I make you feel safe? And just
Mhm.
those little things that you learn. So I put the link in the chat. My hope tonight is that you will get on this site and take the assessment and do it with your significant other. Because what happened to me, and I think this will happen with you, is you're taking the primal question, you're immediately going to recognize what your spouse is. It's so much easier to see what your spouse is, your significant other, than your own primal question. But if you go on there and you come away tonight with the answer to your one or two most pressing primal questions and your spouse's, your life's going to be richer just for that little exercise. And then if you dig into the book or dig into the website or decide to go further, it's even going to be more meaningful. I know for me, Mike, it's made me more empathetic. It was
Yes.
really easy for me to get along with people like me all my life.
Yep.
You know, that's easy, right? When I find people that are action and ready to get things done and they dress good and they're ready to go for it, those are my kind of people. But as I try to figure out, so my question to you is, when you're talking to someone and you want to be empathetic, how do you start to figure out what their primal question is?
Great, great, great question. One of the things that, again, the book does, and then of course the certification does, is help you understand the profile of each question. And there's definitely some key markers for each question that you will see that will help you identify what their primal question is. Again, I didn't do this assessment with Kobe, but I know Kobe's primal question because he hits all the markers for it. Adele, the artist Adele. Adele's primal question is clearly question 3, am I loved? Because you look at both her triggers, you look at her gifts, you look at her songs, you look at her relationship with her fans. It's all through the lens of love. Okay. She writes love songs. Okay. She writes about heartache. Her most triggered time in her life, probably the most dysregulated time in her life, was when she was going through a divorce. She talks about going to therapy every single day because her life was so unhinged because of the divorce that she was going through. Again, divorce being a big hell no to your primal question, right? So the more familiar we are with the profiles, the quicker we're going to get it. But here's one of the things that parents always ask me: how do I know my kid's primal question? Okay, and first of all, they always say, like, how do I keep a primal question from happening to my kid? Number one, you don't need to stop that imprint, because we've got to remember, on the other side of the imprint is a really powerful gift. Okay. Yes, I would not want to go through any of the pain that I've gone through in my life, nor you would not want to go through that pain again. But we all can look at those wounds, those confusions from our childhood, some of the pain, some of that trauma. All of it has given us this really beautiful gift that we now get to give to others. And so we don't want to stop the primal question from imprinting, because I don't think you can. But what you can do is orient around your child's primal question by listening to what matters to them. What questions, what language are they using? What are their concerns? Are there concerns around being loved? Are there concerns around safety? Are there concerns around winning? Value? Listen to it. And the same is true with adults. Adults use language, specific language. They will frame. I have a Q6 who I coach, and I just bring this up every single time I'm coaching them, because every time I say something that's valuable to him or his life, this is what he says: "Oh man, that's so good. That's so good." Okay, like he's literally, okay, am I good enough? Okay, he is affirming using the language good enough. I use a lot of language. When my son leaves my house, he comes and visits us. Sometimes he lives in Long Beach, and he leaves my house. I say, the last thing I tell him is, "Hey man, drive safe." Okay. I'm just like, it's so, if you just pay attention, you're going to see the emotional priorities of people. Okay. And you can listen for that language, and you can see that nuance, and you look at the triggers, and you look at what affirms them and what makes them come alive. And And that's going to help us understand the primal question. It's not as difficult as we think it is. I mean, part of what I've tried to do here with the whole model is make it as simple as possible. Hopefully you can, after this session, go share it with friends immediately, because it's not that difficult, but it's got a ton of power behind it.
Ton of power. We got about 5 minutes left. I want to open up. Anybody have any questions of Mike before we go? Anything at all? Anybody in the chat or want to raise their hand?
Mike, I got a quick question for you.
Go ahead, David.
Once the assessment is done, do you get like an email that basically breaks down kind of where you're at, what you need to be doing, or how you utilize this information?
Absolutely. So basically the way it works is you give us your email address. We then send you the results. There's a little video that I record specifically for that primal question. There's some written results. Now, it is not what I would say an exhaustive list of things to think about, but it is the beginning of the journey in terms of beginning to understand and get into the conversation around that particular question that you have from your results. And so it's basically video and some content, some written content that will get you started on that journey.
Awesome.
Just as a quick follow-up, does it talk about the satellite question as well?
It doesn't, but thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't talk about that at all. But the satellite question that David's referring to is the question next to your question, okay? And really the question next to your primal question is what I would call like a secondary emotional need that you have. So I'll give you an example. For me, my primal question is, am I safe? But my satellite question is going to be question 2, am I secure? And so this is why the tax thing and the financial bill kind of sent me into my scramble, because financial security is incredibly important to my safety. So I talk about that more in the book. I dive more into how those dynamics work. And how the satellite plays out in terms of impacting your primal question. But a satellite question is the question next to your primal question. So again, like for Scott, his primal question is question 3, am I loved? So it's either going to be question 2, am I secure? Or question 4, am I wanted? Which would be that secondary or satellite question. And Scott, I think yours is, am I wanted, correct?
Am I good enough? Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Go ahead, Scott.
No, you go.
Well, one of the things I was going to say is there are I don't like hard, fast rules around the model to say like, hey, you only have one primal question that you have to manage, or a satellite question has to be the question next to your question. Because a lot of times what will happen is we have the childhood imprint that certainly would be our primal question. But what happens when we have an experience later on in our lives as an adult? Maybe you're in your 20s now, and let's say your primal question was, am I successful? Okay, that's the family of origin imprint. But then you get jumped and beaten up and robbed, one evening, okay, and you experience a sort of traumatic event. Well, now you have an additional question to manage, right? Am I safe? Okay. And so the thing that we want to do as coaches is help give language to the unmet need, or to the deep need that we have, and help us grow in that area, help us learn how to meet that need ourselves, how to invite other people to meet that need. What kind of things do we need to put in our life to have that need not live in this state of being unmet, but actually having it fulfilled. And so again, the starting point with the whole model is, yes, we all have a primal question, but that doesn't sort of dismiss the other questions. And clients and people that you work with may have additional needs that feel just as strong. Now, I would say there's one for sure that is the track, but that doesn't mean we don't have to manage some of the other questions in our life.
Awesome. I have 2 closing thoughts. One, be careful, because this is a bit addicting. when I first heard about this, I had had years of therapy, and I told Mike right away, you're a therapist's worst nightmare, because you can crystallize in one book or in one hour, 2 hours, exactly what's going on in your life. And so there's no accidents here. My primal question, I'm not afraid to say it, is, am I loved? My hope for you today is that what you heard is the primal gift. If you didn't hear anything else, I hope what you heard is the positive nature of your primal question. And so part of Am I Loved is we build communities, right? And we're very proud of this community we built. And then my follow-up primal question is, am I good enough? And so we do a charity event every 4 days in America, and those kind of things. This is addicting, though. The more you dig into this, I'm super excited that I am almost finished with my certification, because I want to go into churches and schools and teach parents how to get along with their adolescents better during that sort of rough period that we get to experience as parents. So if you're interested in going deeper, by all means, check into Mike's website. It's posted here. He's got a great coaching platform. He's super supportive. He's ever present on there. It's been a lot of fun. It's been the most fun certification I've ever done, because can't wait to get on there every morning and learn more. But it's awesome, and it's had a big impact on lots of my relationships, and I hope it does for all of you as well. So Mike, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your friendship. And I appreciate all of you for being here. Thank y'all so much for taking time out of your valuable day. Enjoy.
Thanks, Scott.
Take care. Thank you,
Thanks,
Mike.
everyone.